Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up for Friday, February 17th, 2017, the WNW 272. That's 21717. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about this absolute media frenzy about the Russians. Jared Salente brought it up, and they're still on this. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Michael Flynn, the top national security person in the Trump White House, they could be colluding with the Russians, which is totally bogus. White House faces an onslaught. They call it an onslaught. Some people are saying it's the new Watergate. That's a Penny Ante story, and this is even more Penny Ante than that because no laws were broken that I think, unless he lied to the FBI. And so what? You didn't think Hillary Clinton lied to the FBI? You didn't think Hillary Clinton didn't do things that she should have been charged for? This is Penny Ante. It's nothing. It's really nothing. And here again we have the fallout over Mike Flynn. It's unbelievable. Some people on the Washington Post, that liberal rag, is saying that, let's face it, Trump is unfit. That's just totally bogus ideas. Totally bogus. Here's not a bogus idea. It's Donald Trump. After Flynn's resignation, this has happened on Valentine's Day. This is Washington Post. I can't believe they had an honest headline. Trump says the real story is illegal leaks, and he is absolutely right about that. This is unconstitutional. This is the deep state. This is the segments of the security apparatus, the intelligence apparatus that is going after Donald Trump by recording his phone calls and releasing information and meetings he's had between heads of states and now his national security advisor text and releasing transcripts of calls. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Here we have Trump's national security advisor, as WikiLeaks weighs in here. National security advisor Michael Flynn resigns after destabilization campaign by U.S. spies, Democrats, and press. They actually said in the press conference today, well, we don't hate you, Mr. Trump. Yeah, right. Yeah, right, Mr. President. We don't hate you. This is WikiLeaks 2017. This is also on Valentine's Day. They're talking about a destabilization campaign. This is Julian Assange saying this. That is a destabilization campaign by U.S. spies, Democrats, and the press that is in a fevered pitch to try to get rid of Donald Trump, even though he won. Speaking of Democrats, here's Dennis Kucinich, who may end up in the Trump White House. Wake Up America, Dennis Kucinich says. He defends Trump, issues a dire warning about deep state. This is about the people that are committing unconstitutional acts about the commander-in-chief and his staff by recording the phone calls. And you think that's not happening? A guy by the name of Larry Klayman of Freedom Watch. He's the Freedom Watch founder. He got an injunction against the NSA in 2013 for, the NSA doing this mass data collection and spying on all Americans. Well, he says, he's been on Fox, says, I need to go back to I went back to the judge. He got an emergency meeting to say that to the judge that they're not abiding by your judgment and to stop doing all this data collection. Obviously, they're not. Now, Larry Klayman, if you read right here, here's a quote: hostile act in violation of Constitution, he says. This is outrage beyond imagination and must be stopped. Not only Trump administration, but even Supreme Court judges. He also mentioned federal judges. Now, this is unbelievable. He says that the intel agencies are more powerful than the president. And the information, quote, can be used to blackmail people. Oh, you mean like Judge Roberts on the Supreme Court, the deciding vote for Obamacare? You think maybe somebody like that could have been blackmailed for a judgment? Maybe. There was talk about that he was blackmailed, but nobody could ever bring it up. And now Klayman says, oh no, they definitely are listening to the phone calls of federal judges, Supreme Court judges, the Trump administration, the President of the United States. Outrageous. It is outrageous, and it's treason. It's bordering on, I think it's treason. It's certainly felony activity. And yes, that is the real story. And Trump says in his press conference, today, actually Thursday, the leaks are real. Trump said the news is fake. Let's talk about fake news. Now, Jim Acosta, a reporter who was at CNN while I was there, he was the guy that did the story where he didn't run down his own story about we're doing a story on the intelligence briefing. And of course, he didn't come out and say, well, all the information in the briefing is either factually incorrect, uncorroborated, or totally bogus. He didn't do that. He was the one that sat in front of President Trump, tried to throw a pie in his face, tried to debate him, and he just didn't do his job. He said, well, I'm doing my job. No, Jim Acosta, you didn't. Because if you would have, you'd have spiked that story as a fake one. And then you have President Trump in the press conference today. Did you watch the press conference on Thursday? I'm telling you what, that was a tour de force. He said, telling Jim Acosta, I have a new name. I have a new name for fake news. Very fake news. That's what he's saying, very fake news. It's very fake news, and it is fake news. And, here we have Jake Tapper bemoans the fact that the conference tacked, you legitimately won the presidency. Now go to work and stop whining about it. In other words, go to work and stop pointing out the fact that we are lying by omission and we're lying, and he keeps calling the press dishonest people because they are. I mean, did we forget about all the WikiLeaks revelations about the 10 most damning Clinton emails, and there were many more than that proved collusion between, the mainstream media and the Clinton camp, that they were trying to help her get elected? I mean, Chris Cuomo sat on the set, and I brought this quote up, and he said, we've done just about everything we can for Clinton. Isn't that fake news when you take one side in a political bet? Yes, it's propaganda, which is fake news. And what about, CNN had on the staff Donna Brazile, who helped Hillary Clinton cheat against Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And then they wouldn't even cover the WikiLeaks. CNN wouldn't, along with all the other mainstream press. I heard one pontificator on CNN say, well, we think it's fake. No, those emails are not fake. They have been legitimized by the quote-unquote Russian hacking story, which is some more BS. This was leaks and the counter coup, I think, and a lot of information. A lot of people will come out and say this is a counter coup by inside the intelligence agencies to dump all this information out. Also leaks from the DNC. And they didn't cover any of these things. I mean, it's unbelievable the things that they were doing. I mean, you had John Harwood at NBC giving advice to the Clinton camp. Let's see, Glenn Thrush, who was at Politico, who gave John Podesta his article for approval, and he wrote about how he, I feel like a hacker. I'm a hack, and don't share this or tell anyone if I effed up anything. Huffington Post said that they were going to try to get Hillary elected. Here we had Clinton staffers placing stories with Politico. Also, they gave some script approval. John Podesta receiving drafts of the New York Times articles before they were posted. Clinton staff placing a story friendly at the AP. Mordia collusion at the New York Times and AP helpful to Clinton campaign. That was also released in the WikiLeaks. And none of these people got fired for any of this, giving out script approval, helping the Clinton. None of these people, not a single person, got fired in the mainstream press. And CNN also helped the Clintons, and thus the moniker the Clinton News Network. And I think rightfully owned and rightfully given to the CNN, the cable news network that was so in the tank for Clinton. It was easy to say it was the Clinton News Network. And then they omitted stories. They didn't even cover the WikiLeaks because, they didn't like the political. Yes, that's fake news. Jake Tapper was opining on the air with Kellyanne Conway saying, are you telling me with all of our people overseas and doing good stories and about these attacks with Muslims, extreme radical Islam? I don't even think he said radical Islam, just extremists. But are you telling me it's fake news? Hey, yeah, Jake, you did some good stories, but you left out a lot of stuff. You lied by omission. You didn't cover the WikiLeaks thing. You had a paid staffer on CNN helping out Clinton. I'll tell you, I know some more things about fake news. I worked at CNN for 2 years. I was doing stories about 6 months before my contract wasn't renewed about how the economy was going to blow up in 2007 and 2008. And I said, hey, listen, you can't knock out cars. Auto sales were way off. Housing was in big trouble. The subprime, which wasn't going to be contained. And I said that. And the banks were all in trouble. And what happened with the banks? TARP. Timothy Geithner said they all would have failed if they wouldn't have had help from the Treasury, from the Fed. I mean, he's a former Treasury Secretary. He said TARP was a Treasury instrument. I mean, unbelievable. And then we got all this QE and all this other stuff. And, for that, my contract wasn't renewed. Or maybe it was that I did depleted uranium munitions, where you could fire a bolt of molten metal, would be on fire at 4,000 degrees. It would burn through anything, including, all the way through tanks and through buildings and through everything. When you fired it, it turned pyrophoric. And, when they aired that story, CNN, at midnight one night. It also aired on the morning show, but it aired at midnight on the main channels. Couldn't get him to do it. How about Amber Lyons, where she did a story about dissidents in Bahrain, and on CNN International they did this story for CNN International. It only aired domestically. CNN says, well, we aired parts of it internationally. Oh no, but they didn't. Amber Lyons says, they were basically censoring her. That the most of the Arab-speaking world watched CNN International and it didn't air it internationally. She said that they, basically that they got censored. What's in Bahrain? The U.S. Fifth Fleet. Amber Lyons won all kinds of awards, and then 7-8 months later, her contract wasn't renewed. Yes, fake news for people who tell the truth and tell a narrative that you don't like. Yes, Jake Tapper, Jim Acosta. Yes, fake news. We didn't forget about how you were in the tank for Hillary, and now you're in the tank against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump laid this out in the press conference and talked about the tone, talked about how dishonest the press was. He's correct. Talked about the hate, talked about the panels that CNN has, where they load up the panels with people that hate Donald Trump, and it's one nasty thing after another, and they're not fair. They have to be fair arbiters of the truth. Do you think the mainstream media has been fair? No, they have not. And that means they're fake. Here you have John Bolton talking, this is a Breitbart headline, engaging in collective hysteria because they cannot make substantive arguments against Trump policies. They can't make good arguments against Trump policies, so they're going crazy. And most people are for what Donald Trump wants to do with the ban from countries that have massive amounts of terror, and most of them don't have functioning governments. Like Libya, like Syria, who has a functioning government, but a half of a government. We have Yemen, which is in a total breakdown civil war. Those are the countries, some of the countries, that he is not allowing people to come into America for. That's what he wants. Of course, the courts have knocked that down. He is going to be out with a new a proposal to try to keep America safe from these massive amounts of terrorists that want to come into the country from Muslim countries, Muslim radical extremists. We find out the Obama administration couldn't even mention the word, Islamic extremists. Wouldn't do it, and the press covered him on that. Oh, more fake news for the press, covering on not calling, a threat what it really is, and that's Islamic terror or Islamic extremism. That's fake news when you dumb it down and call it something like, radical extremist. What kind of radical extremist? Oh, they're connected to Islam. This is the crazy part of Islam, where they'll kill even many Muslims who don't really want to chop the heads off of people. Speaking of more fake news, here's more fake news. Not just what you say, but what you don't cover. This Clinton Foundation shuts down the Clinton Global Initiative. Now, number one, the Clinton Foundation was only a library. I've had Charles Ortel on here. He knows all about this. Clinton Foundation shuts down. So listen, this was the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, I should say, which was going to operate when Hillary won. That's the more stuff. All the polls at CNN, all the fake polls. Oh, Hillary's going to win. Oh, she's going to win by a landslide. I digress. All the fake disinformation, all the psyops by the mainstream press, including CNN, which Donald Trump calls fake news. Very fake news, I agree. But the Clinton Foundation shuts down Clinton Global Initiative. This is a multi-billion-dollar charity, global charity, where Bill Clinton says, we've done a lot of good work. Right? Well, they've done so much good work, it's shutting down. Well, according to Charles Ortel, he says, listen, this is the epitome, number one, that I say, of pay to play. But according to Charles Ortel, listen, there are many laws set up where you can't have a charity, collect money, and then, hey, thanks, y'all, we're shutting down now. Oh, no. No, you can't just start a charity and shut it down without a peep, without any accounting for where the money went. Why isn't CNN doing this story about this this is a huge story. She was going to have this while she was in the White House and step away and let Chelsea run it. The Clinton Global Initiative. This is a huge story. This is too stupid to be stupid to miss. And yet, nobody at CNN is chasing this story and saying, hey, Hillary Clinton, what's happening to all the money from the Clinton Global Initiative? And by the way, why are you shutting it down? Ooh, they don't like that. That's against their ultra-liberal biased narrative. They don't want Hillary, the person they backed, the Clinton News Network and other mainstream media, they don't want to do a story about that. This is a huge story. As a reporter, this is a steak dinner of enormous proportions to look into, delve into, chew into this story. I mean, this is like a triple ribeye, bone-in story, and they're not covering it. Not a word, not a peep. It's the silence on this story is deafening. That's fake news, Jim Acosta. That's fake news, CNN, when you don't cover huge stories. And that is a huge one. I want to talk a little bit about the economy. And I like Donald Trump, but the economy is ultimately going to trip him up. This is why he's saying in this press conference today that he had, quote, inherited a big mess. He did. We got $20 trillion. And it wasn't just Barack Obama that gave us this 20 trill. I mean, this was, we had 6 years of a House and Senate controlled, or at least a House, and then later the Senate. The Republicans helped with this. The last 2 years of Obama's administration, from 14 on, Mitch McConnell controlled the Senate. And then, and then the House was under the control of the Republicans for the last, 6 years. So, the Republicans helped the Democrats and everybody else belly up to the bar and give us all this, double the national debt. From Bush to the end of Obama, doubled the national debt. Do you think it'll double again? I don't think so. But here's Janet Yellen talking in front of Congress, and you talk about being freaked out. Yellen defends Fed's methods at hearing. About how they got all this debt on the books, and they bailed out all these banks and bought all these bonds in the subprime era, where the bonds aren't worth much, if anything. Here we have Yellen gives timetable to shrink the Fed's assets. That's the bonds that I'm talking about. Their balance sheet went from 800 something billion to $4.4 trillion. I mean, they blew up their balance sheet, printing money to buy all these mortgage-backed securities to bail out, their member banks and not implode the system. John Williams at shadowstats.com continually says, the Fed's worried about the banking system. Then there's another story out this week, from a former Fed aficionado saying that they have about half the capital, the banks have about half the capital they really need. When you have half of what you really need, you're in trouble. That's trouble. But yet, Janet Yellen comes out and speaking in front of Congress, and here's the headline here: bank stocks, dollar, and yield surge after Yellen warns waiting too long to hike is unwise. Waiting too long to hike is unwise. If you talk about hiking rates, now if you just rewind in the last week or so, you have the Vice Chairman Stanley Fischer saying that gets this coded message saying that things may be destabilized and they wouldn't be raising rates. Basically, you have James Bullard at the St. Louis Fed out being quoted saying, "Oh, we don't need to raise rates for at least all of 2017." And then Shazam, Janet Yellen comes out and says, "Well, waiting too long to hike is unwise." I mean, I called my friend Gregory Mannarino and said, what is up with this? And he said, well, listen, the Federal Reserve is scared to death. Mannarino, traderschoice.net. He says, I think it's scared to death that people will start selling the bonds. You have a run on the bonds and boom, it's over just like that. And therefore, I mean, we both come to the conclusion they're going to sacrifice the dollar. They're going to try to hold rates down as long as they can. And another thing that I thought was unbelievably bizarre while she's testifying in front of Congress is not what she said, it's what she didn't say. Do you know we have record all-time highs in all indexes? Russell 2000, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and the Dow. Record all-time highs. You think that'd be a good thing? You think she'd toot her horn and say, hey, wow, that's really a good thing. I think that not raising rates, they're willing to put up with the symptom, the thing that happens, because they're not doing it, the side effect of the stock market, absolutely skyrocketing because everybody thinks they're never going to raise rates and the money's cheap and the party's going to go on forever. That's the side effect of them holding rates down. And that the market is exploding and they know it, and it makes them nervous, so they're not even going to say anything about it while they're continuing to hold rates down so people don't start selling the bonds and the negative interest rate paying bonds over in Europe and the 10-year treasuries they bought at 1.5 and 1.6 and 1.7. Those rates start going up, boom, sell, and the whole thing could come tumbling down. So what they didn't even acknowledge all these record all-time highs, and Mannarino says they're scared to death. They absolutely don't know what to do and scared to death. That said, I want to tell you about the upcoming guest on the early Sunday release. It's Dane Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org, and he says, listen, all what you're talking about is for naught. What they're doing with, the chemtrails, which is solar radiation management and geoengineering and controlling the climate. What they're doing there is starting to, the cracks are starting to show. People are starting to think, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Like 100-degree day in the dead of winter in Oklahoma. Or Dane Wigington points out, one day it's 65 degrees in the Northeast, and the next day you got a snowstorm. It's unbelievable. It's all because of geoengineering and what they're doing to control the climate, and controlling the climate makes things even worse. And he's going to be the early Sunday release. And one of the scary things, scientifically speaking, he says, Dane Wigington, he says, one report says, the Earth has, life as we know it on Earth has about 10 years left if we don't stop this right away. You got to watch the early Sunday release with Dane Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org. With that, I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. That helps us. And remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is firmly in charge.